the 4th of February. And I'm proud to show my support for World Cancer Day by wearing my Unity band and helping to play my part in making sure the Scottish Parliament is putting cancer on the agenda during this important week. And I want to thank members who signed the motion who are able to be in the chamber today. And I want to thank and pay tribute to Cancer Research UK for being the driving force behind this motion and this debate, and helping to ensure that we could all be here today with good information at our fingertips. Also thanks to Macmillan, British Lung Foundation and Pancreatic Cancer Scotland for their helpful briefings for the debate, but also for the work that you do all year round, because cancer is something that affects all of us, either directly or our family and our friends. Half of us in Scotland will be diagnosed with cancer at some point in our lives. That sounds quite scary and it's very serious. But thanks to the commitment to research and advancements in treatment, more and more of us are surviving. Half of people diagnosed with cancer will survive, with survival rates now double that of what they were 40 years ago. So that is positive. And the ambition of Cancer Research UK is to double that progress by 2034, so that 3/4 of people diagnosed with cancer will survive. It's an ambition that we can and must meet, but doing so won't be an easy task. As Macmillan has pointed out, the number of people living with cancer is increasing, already up 15% from 2015. And in 5 years' time, we expect that 300,000 people in Scotland will be living with cancer. So to improve survival rates, we need to take serious action now. And we also, I believe, have to really address the shameful wealth inequalities that continue to affect life expectancy in our poorest communities, because inequalities is a big factor when we look at people's cancer experience. How can it be acceptable that people living in the poorest areas, compared with the wealthiest, are not only more likely to be diagnosed with cancer, they're also less likely to receive an early diagnosis? And we know that getting an early diagnosis is so crucial to increasing survival rates. Your postcode should never determine your life expectancy. And it beggars belief that in 2020 it still does for so many people. In a country as rich as Scotland, it shames our society. And I feel we have been far too complacent. After over 20 years of this Scottish Parliament, it is a matter of deep regret that we've been unable to reduce health inequalities in the way we need to. And years of cuts to public services mean poverty is growing instead of reducing. So we continue to face challenges, but we have choices to make. And the work of Cancer Research and others in continuing to invest and develop innovative treatments is so vital. There is still so much we need to learn, especially for types of cancer that continue to be difficult to treat and have low survival rates. Lung cancer continues to be a major concern and a driver of inequalities in Scotland. Not only is it more common for people living in the most deprived communities, it's also likely to be diagnosed late and has a very poor survival rate. In Lanarkshire, where I live and represent, almost half of bowel, breast and lung cancer patients are diagnosed at stages 3 and 4. That is very, very worrying, and we must act to improve this. And in preparing for today's debate, I've been speaking to constituents and to people who work in our health service. And one particular doctor said to me, if there's one thing you can do as a parliament, is to encourage people to get symptoms checked out. Don't delay. You're not a burden on the health service. Your doctor will be glad to see you. And I recall my mum's cancer diagnosis a couple of years ago, where she actually went to the GP because she had a sore throat she just couldn't clear and was feeling run down, and went along for a chat. And her doctor took the time to listen, to ask other questions, and completely unrelated to her sore throat, she was sent on a pathway where she was within 2 weeks diagnosed with bowel cancer. If she hadn't made that trip to the doctor there and then, that could have been a much later diagnosis. So my mum has recovered well and is a survivor, and it just reminds me that all of us, we have to remind people that they're not a burden on the health service and they should go and see their doctor. So that leads me to say thank you. We have to recognise the massive contribution that our NHS staff make and who make it possible for people to be successfully treated for cancer. So to them, I think all of us would say thank you. Thank you for everything that you do. But cancer outcomes can't be improved by goodwill and determination alone. Staff need support, and that's why we need increased coordinated action from the Scottish Government and more investment in the diagnostic workforce. The Cross-Party Group on Cancer published its inquiry report in November and highlighted that diagnostic workforce pressures is the key issue facing survival rates in Scotland and is responsible for the pressure on cancer treatment services. Our NHS staff are simply remarkable, but growing pressures in our health service is only making their job more challenging. The cancer waiting times target hasn't been met since 2012, 8 years ago, and the latest figures from government reveals that over 4,000 vacant nursing posts exist, the highest ever vacancy rate. It's unacceptable that we're in a situation where the NHS doesn't have enough staff to be as effective as it could be and should be in diagnosing cancer. So we can and must do better. And that's where I hope we can all focus our attention in the coming weeks and months. And I hope the Scottish ministers will listen to the calls to create a plan to meet the current and future needs of cancer patients as quickly as possible. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, cancer sadly is a disease which touches many of our lives, and World Cancer Day is a global effort to make sure that the focus on how we reduce inequalities, improve research and survival rates, and ultimately save people's lives remains high on the political agenda. I'm proud to play a very small part in bringing this debate to the Chamber today so that we can focus our efforts in this Parliament to improving outcomes for cancer patients in Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Lennon. I call Emma Harper to be followed by Miles Briggs. Ms Harper, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to be speaking in this debate, highlighting World Cancer Day today, and congratulate Monica Lennon on securing it. Members may recall last year I led this debate and focused a lot on unity and the need for us all to stand and work together to truly win the fight against cancer. I also spoke a lot about my wee sister Buffy, also a nurse, and her breast cancer journey. 4 years ago, on February the 4th, on World Cancer Day, my sister had her first chemo treatment. 4 years ago, and now she describes that it's taken 4 years to feel mentally and emotionally back to where she was before. This year's World Cancer Day theme is I am and I will. And unity is still vitally important, though. And I'm proud again to be wearing my unity band this afternoon, and I will continue to engage and listen and pay heed to ongoing research to cure cancer. We know 1 in 2 people will get cancer in their lifetime, and we know that in the last 40 years survival rates have doubled, and half the people diagnosed with cancer are now surviving thanks to the great progress made in cancer research. But we know there's still a long way to go, and I'm pleased the Scottish Government are delivering on their promises to improve cancer services the length and breadth of the country. In Dumfries and Galloway, we've got 1,135 people currently living with cancer and around 530 cancer deaths each year. Because D&G is a large rural region, we also have several challenges with the delivery of cancer services. Since my election, I, along with South Scotland MSP colleagues, have been actively lobbying for a change to current cancer pathway arrangements for the region. Currently, NHS Dumfries and Galloway is part of the South and East Scotland Cancer Network, SCAN, which means that patients, particularly in the west of the region in Stranraer and Wigtonshire, who require more complex treatments and radiotherapy, they often travel to Edinburgh. It's a 260-mile round trip, which leads to patients' discomfort, distress and frustration. Continued campaigning from local residents and a local action group last year has led to NHS Dumfries and Galloway last year agreeing to change the current arrangements to have a more flexible approach focused on patient choice. This is welcome. However, many local people are concerned about the timescale for implementing this change, and I would therefore ask the Minister whether the Scottish Government are able to assist the Board in implementing appropriate changes in cancer network arrangements. It's hugely important for local people and their families. While we have challenges, there is also great work going on throughout the region. Research is being conducted in Dumfries and Galloway and nationally for a simple home self-test for cervical screening for human papillomavirus. And I'm interested in the Minister's response earlier to my supplementary question about self-tests for HPV and the national pilot programme. I'd like to also touch base on a recent cross-party approach with local palliative care expert Professor David Clark. The group, along with some of our local MSPs, are currently exploring the possibility of bringing a Maggie Centre to D&G to complement, not compete, with other services in the region, including Marie Curie, Macmillan and the local health board. The talks are still in early stages, but we're excited about the prospects of pursuing establishing a Maggie Centre in Dumfries and Galloway, as Maggie Keswick did live near Dumfries. I asked the Minister to support us in progressing this. The group do great work putting on events and we're trying to develop a process where we've got much more support to enable this. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, my sister Buffy said about this year's theme of I am and I will. She said, I am a cancer survivor and I will be there to support others to survive their cancer too. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. I call Miles Briggs. We follow by Claire Adamson. Mr Briggs, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And I'd like to start by congratulating Monica Lennon on securing today's debate and the excellent opening speeches actually that we've heard. And as the co-convener of the Parliament's cross-party group on cancer alongside Anna Sarwar, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to take part in the debate to mark World Cancer Day, which took place earlier this week. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank all the organisations who have provided some really useful briefings ahead of today's debate. And the motion is right to highlight the progress that has been made over the last few decades with the doubling of survival rates. Half of people in Scotland now survive cancer, and Cancer Research UK has the aim to accelerate progress and see 3 in 4 people survive the disease by 2034. What we need to see is an extra and significant focus now on those cancers with lower survival rates, such as lung, pancreatic, esophageal and brain cancers. We also need to see more research into these types of cancers and new and innovative approaches to treat them. All of us recognise the critical importance of early diagnosis to improve survival rates, especially in the areas of high deprivation. And I therefore have been concerned by some of the waiting times which have been highlighted recently in some parts of our country, especially for tests that will determine if people actually have cancer, an issue which has emerged strongly in our cross-party group report and as Monica Lennon's highlighted. Now, I've challenged the Scottish Government to look towards how we can try to change this. For example, a pilot of fast-track cancer diagnosis centres based on the NHS England's Rapid Diagnostic and Assessment Centre, which they've taken forward. I hope this is something the Minister will look at again, because it's quite clear that in our most deprived communities, late diagnosis and late presentation is something we really need to move towards addressing. Now, we have achieved a great deal, and some public awareness campaigns in the past have really helped to drive that forward, and we've seen those in breast cancer and lung cancer. And these campaigns are needed to actually look towards how we address some of the low diagnosis rates. I fully support Cancer Research UK's call for the Scottish Government to tackle issues in the diagnostic workforce across Scotland. This is essential, and it's a demand for tests which we are seeing now increasing on an annual basis due to the ageing population, yes, but also due to staffing challenges. We need to see that workforce delivered, and it's something which was outlined recently in our cross-party report. Monica Lennon specifically outlined the concerning situation around lung cancer. For lung cancer specifically, there are only 27% of diagnosis of cancer at stage 1 or 2. Now, I believe the Scottish Government needs to move ahead on some of the areas where we can see progress, such as NHS England are currently doing in a properly resourced pilot screening programme for lung health checks across the country. I know this is something the Government are currently engaged on, but we need to see progress on that. Minimising the time for diagnosis of treatment needs a renewed focus by the Government, and I hope this debate can help take that forward. In December, official statistics showed that 654 cancer patients were still waiting longer than the 62-day standard for their first cancer treatment, with only 2 health boards actually meeting the treatment target. Ministers must now set out the detailed plans to ensure that these targets are going to be consistently met across Scotland. I agree with the motion's recognition of some of the world-leading research into cancer taking place here in Scotland. A lot of that in the academic institutions based here in my own Lothian region. That's something I think we should all celebrate as a country. Edinburgh University houses Cancer Research UK's Brain Tumour Centre of Excellence, which works alongside UCL on cutting-edge brain tumour research. Dr. Stephen Pollard and his team are to be hugely congratulated for the work which they are developing for potential new treatments for the common type of brain tumour in adults specifically. Among many other notable successes achieved at Edinburgh University in the past year has been the role of their clinical trials leading to the approval of the new ovarian cancer treatment pathway as well. Deputy Presiding Officer, I'd again like to take this opportunity to welcome today's debate and the focus that it brings, and World Cancer Day allows us to bring to this Parliament on the subject and treatment and support for patients with cancer. We can rightly point to progress being made and the importance for world-class research which is going on in Scotland and across the UK. And I hope that, as has already been highlighted today in the debate, we can work together constructively to make sure that real strides continue to be taken forward over the coming years, especially in those cancers with the lowest survival rates and where we really do need to see more progress. That's going to take real investment and leadership from Scottish Government ministers, but also for this Parliament to hold them to account on the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I respectfully ask members to try to keep to 4 minutes, otherwise I'll have to seek an extension to the debate, and that may not be appropriate. I call Claire Adamson to be followed by Lewis MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I too would like to thank Monica Lennon for bringing this motion to the Parliament today and to the Chamber. I've spoken in many of these debates over the years, and I'm always struck that it is indeed a moment when party politics are truly left at the door of the Chamber, and we're all reminded that we share a common experience of friends, of family members, tributes to colleagues, all who have been touched by cancer, and the fact that so many of us are able to tell those stories speaks about volumes about how important it is that we mark World Cancer Day and that we continue to raise these issues in the Chamber. As someone whose father died of bowel cancer, I would like to highlight the plight of some of the less survivable cancers such as brain, lung, esophageal, stomach and liver cancer. And one that I have raised in the Chamber, no surprise, I'm going to raise it again today, pancreatic cancer. The Less Survival Task Force charities represent these cancers, and 44% of cancer deaths in Scotland are from the less survivable cancers, and only 1 in 5 people are diagnosed early enough for treatment that will life-saving treatment, and the 5-year survival rate is less than 14% for these cancers. So I look forward to the Minister maybe giving us an update today on how the Government is supporting the research and better clinical outcomes for patients suffering from these cancers. But today is also to highlight the amazing work that's done in support of those affected by cancer, and the challenge that we're all being given, each and every one of us, is that I can and I will do something to support better outcomes for cancer in Scotland. And I, along with my colleagues, I'm wearing my Unity band. I know that there's a call to do a 10,000 step a day challenge in March. The brace in my knee will mean that I will not be doing that challenge. But I did, however, attend a wonderful event in the home of Professor Andrew Biankin just last week. Professor Biankin is the Regis Chair of Surgery at the University of Glasgow and the Cancer Research UK clinician scientist. He is the director of the Wolfson Wall Cancer Research Centre, which is focused on precision oncology. His leadership loads in national and international consortia in cancer genomics and therapeutic development. And the work on precision cancer, Precision PANC, as it's known in this country, is truly world-beating, and it will make a huge difference to how the cancers may be treated in the future. Precision PANC was founded in 2017, bringing together expertise in pancreatic cancer from the University of Glasgow, Cancer Research UK Beatson Institute, Cancer UK Cambridge Institute, Manchester Institute and the Institute of Cancer Research in London, the University of Oxford and the NHS. With 10,000 patients diagnosed annually in the UK with pancreatic cancer and 330,000 worldwide and 9,300 deaths a year, by 2025, pancreatic cancer is predicted to be the second most lethal cancer after lung cancer. Now, Pancreatic Cancer Scotland have asked that we recognise this as a decade of change, because we have to change those statistics and outcomes for less survivable cancers. If I could just quote for Professor Biancan from that day, he said, it was a wonderful day in his house, 80 people there celebrating Burns Night and Australia Day on the same day, and raising over £5,000 for pancreatic cancer. He said 50 years ago women didn't know how to examine their breasts, recognise breast cancer or have screening. But with a lot of investment of time, energy and money, we've seen death rates from breast cancer fall from 50% to 10%. That's the difference we can make, and that's what we need to do for all cancers, particularly pancreatic cancer. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. I call Lewis MacDonald to be followed by Stuart Stevenson.
Thank you very much. I too congratulate Monica Lennon on securing this debate to mark World Cancer Day, an opportunity for people everywhere to reflect on what can be done to support those with cancer and what can be done to reduce the incidence of cancers in the future. Today is a particularly important milestone in the battle with cancer in the north and northeast of Scotland, with the Board of NHS Grampian meeting this morning to approve the full business case for the Anchor Centre at Forrester Hill. It will now go to ministers for final approval, with construction hopefully due to begin later this year. I hope the Minister can confirm that that final approval will be given very quickly. The Anchor Centre will allow joined-up services for patients with cancer and for patients with blood and bone marrow disorders. It will have specific provision for teenagers and young adults, and it will facilitate clinical trials, research and teaching on the Forrester Hill campus shared with Aberdeen University Medical School. Anchor stands for Aberdeen and North Centre for Haematology, Oncology and Radiotherapy. The existing Anchor unit at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary has been providing care and support to cancer patients from across the north of Scotland since 1997, and the new Anchor Centre will build on that fine legacy. The Friends of Anchor is one of the North East's foremost healthcare charities, and I know that Jimmy Milne and his fellow fundraisers will continue to back up the work of healthcare professionals in the new Centre of Excellence, which they have helped to create and inspire, to support patients in Aberdeen and Grampian and across the north and north east. That regional approach has been critical to cancer care in the north of Scotland for a generation, and it will be critical, I think, also to reducing waiting times and improving outcomes for cancer patients in the future. Prompt decisions and an early start in the new centre would certainly send all the right signals about the board's and the government's intentions in this field. It is important to acknowledge the challenges which the project has already faced. Those challenges have not been made in the north. They have come from the calamities which have overcome the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow and the New Children's Hospital in Edinburgh in recent months, causing some further investigation in the case of Aberdeen. Those very serious setbacks to NHS care in Scotland's two largest regional centres have inevitably had implications for Forrester Hill and have added to both the costs and the time required to complete the Anchor Centre, and also the Baird Family Hospital, which has also been given the go-ahead by NHS Grampian today. Public bodies and indeed ministers are rightly called to account when projects go over schedule and over budget, as we heard at First Minister's questions today. But in this case, it is far better, in my view, to have ensured at this stage that there will be no repeat of the things that have gone wrong elsewhere. And I hope that the Baird and Anchor plans can now go forward with support from all concerned. I want finally to mention the latest fundraising initiative of another locally based cancer charity, CLAN, which stands for Cancer Link Aberdeen and North, and which supports patients travelling to Aberdeen for treatment and supports their families. CLAN's Light the North initiative will create a trail of lighthouse sculptures in public places across Grampian, Orkney and Shetland to raise awareness and funding for cancer care. Those sculptures will then be auctioned at the end of the year. Tackling cancer is a job for governments and health boards, but not for them alone. Clan and Friends of Anchor and so many of the other cancer charities we've heard about today also do a fantastic job, and they do it on behalf of us all.
Thank you very much, Mr MacDonald. I call Stuart Stevenson to be followed by Alison Johnson. Mr Stevenson, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And let me just start by absolutely endorsing the remarks of Lewis MacDonald about the excellent work that's done by Friends of Anchor and Clan and other charities in the northeast of Scotland. And of course, thanking Monica Lennon for the opportunity to discuss this important subject. I had a quick look at my previous speeches, and I find I've made 4 speeches that I can find on breast cancer, lung cancer, skin cancer, and most recently in 2018 on young people's cancers. So there is a wide variety of cancers, and we're all aware of that. And of course, the number of cancers that we're diagnosing, by 2027, we're looking at perhaps as many as 40,000 a year. 110 people diagnosed with cancer every single day. And indeed, both my parents died of cancer some considerable time ago, one of breast cancer, one of prostate cancer. But nonetheless, mortality rates have gone down by 12% and in males and 7% in females over the last 10 years. So we are making progress. As we increase our diagnostic capability, we are improving our treatment capability and outcomes. The lowest survival rates in lung cancer, non-small cell lung cancer, smoking being a cause of many of that causes, and of course overweight is a significant cause of cancer. I sit on the very edge of the proper normal range of BMI, occasionally dodging out of it, then struggling to come back in it. But too many in our community, for all sorts of reasons, and particularly in areas of social and economic disadvantage, are suffering from problems of overweight, greater consumption of tobacco, and a wide range of risk factors that we certainly have to address, and others in the debate have made reference to that. Deprived communities, part of the inequalities that we have to tackle. Now, cancer research are telling us, and it's a very exact figure, 41.5% of cancers are potentially preventable. And I think one of the things that is helpful beyond prevention that we've got to undertake, getting smoking under control, getting obesity under control, getting our consumption of alcohol under control, is early detection. Now, I'm in that age group of people who gets an annual postal thing to allow me to test for blood in my stool, which is a primary indication of potential bowel cancer. And I very much welcome the fact that when I first entered that, it was 5 samples one had to take, then it was 3, we're now down to 1, because it's not a process that is highly engaging and exciting. And the more we can deconstruct barriers to people actually doing that test. For me, it's particularly important because I have another condition that tends to give false positives. And Grampian NHS have been extremely good in this follow-up, showing that it was a false positive. And I have far too intimate knowledge with one of their cameras looking at my innards. I hope they continue to give me support as when it may be necessary in future. And most recently, they offered me an appointment on a Sunday, which I thought was superb because it just didn't interfere with other things. And I think that shows some of the innovative approaches that are being taken. Now, the Scottish Government's Detect Early Cancer programme has been running for a number of years. It's a major contributor to detecting early signs of cancer. I hope that it continues to do so, and I hope that we all manage to avoid cancer, or if we get it, that we get the treatment we need. I'm sure we shall.
Thank you. Call Alison Johnson, followed by David Torrance. Mr Torrance is the last speaker in the open debate. Ms Johnson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to thank Monica Lennon for bringing this debate to Parliament, as well as all the other organisations who have supplied us with briefings It is really important that we continue to discuss cancer in this chamber. It affects so many of our families and friends. It affects so many of the people we represent. And as has been discussed, 1 in 2 people will now develop cancer within their lifetime. So I think debates such as these give us an opportunity to highlight the really great work that's taking place in terms of research and treatment. And as the motion states, over the last 40 years, survival rates have doubled, with half of people in Scotland now surviving cancer. And debates like this allow us also to highlight that these efforts are sometimes hampered by workforce challenges. I think Miles Briggs and Stuart Stevenson have touched on the importance of early detection, but there's currently a 10% vacancy rate in diagnostic consultants. So this means that services are struggling to meet a level of demand that will only increase as our population ages. So it makes sense that the earlier cancer is diagnosed, the better, but our overstretched services won't be able to do this if they're subject to increased pressure with no corresponding increase in the workforce. It's essential that we properly resource and staff our cancer services, and Cancer Research UK are calling on the Scottish Government to urgently create a workforce plan to meet this current and future need. We also must continue to use debates like this to draw attention to rarer cancers. I met with the BDA this week. Scotland has one of the highest oral cancer incident rates in Europe, and rates are rising. Cancers like this have lower awareness, cancers like pancreatic and hepatocellular cancer. And like others here today, I recently spoke in a debate about pancreatic cancer awareness, and it was a great opportunity to draw attention to that particular type of cancer with the lowest survival rate, the symptoms of which are vague and not commonly known. Now, as members will know, in previous World Cancer debates, I've highlighted the benefits of physical activity, and I'd like to reiterate this point. Being regularly active can, for example, reduce the level of inflammation in the bowel, helping to prevent bowel cancer, reduce estrogen levels, helping to prevent breast cancer, well, lowering the risk of it certainly, and a 2016 study showed that leisure time physical activity was linked to reduced risks of liver cancer, stomach cancer, kidney cancer, myeloid leukemia, myeloma, and cancers of the head and neck, rectum and bladder. Now, I wholly appreciate that we will not ever succeed in preventing all cases of cancer, but we must emphasise the importance of physical activity to prevention. Physical activity and exercise can also lower the risk of being overweight and obese. Stuart Stevenson focused on this in his contribution. It's the second biggest preventable cause of cancer in the UK after smoking. However, as the motion states, deprivation is a major determinant of who develops cancer and who doesn't. It also has a significant impact on surviving cancer. The risk of developing lung cancer is higher, and the probability of surviving lung cancer is lower among people living in areas of socio-economic deprivation. Engagement with screening services is historically low in deprived areas, and Cancer Research UK have stated that bold, innovative efforts are needed to improve the early diagnosis of cancer. We really have to do everything that we can to optimise cancer screening. Clearly, addressing health inequalities must be at the centre of efforts to improve cancer outcomes. It's our duty to reach every single person at risk. We know that access to good quality green space and sports facilities isn't equitable. We can talk about physical activity helping to prevent cancer until we're blue in the face, but if there's nowhere for you to play football, nowhere safe to jump on your bike or even go for a long walk that isn't a congested, polluted road, opportunities to be active are limited. We've got to remove the barriers to people making choices that will improve their health and lower their risk. I appreciate that. I'm over time, Presiding Officer, and will conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Just a smidgen. David Torrance, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would like to thank Monica Lennon for securing this important debate recognising World Cancer Day in Parliament this afternoon. Today, our thoughts go out to individuals and families affected by this dreadful disease, during which we will also raise awareness of cancer, emphasise paths towards prevention, and highlight recent research. Together, the entire world unites to save millions of preventable deaths each year by educating individuals to take action against disease early on. For many of us, cancer is not an unfamiliar disease. Unfortunately, almost every one of us knows someone who has been deeply affected by it. In fact, Cancer Research UK reported that 1 in 2 people in Scotland will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. While cancer is a common threat, actions to combat it seem to be uncommon in our society. Despite current communication strategies highlighting the importance of early detection, people do not seem to have a clear understanding of its purpose. Research conducted in 2018 concluded that awarenesses of the preventability of cancer through screening was low across all demographic groups in the UK. 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of meeting incredible staff from Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust. In reports, they found that 1 in 4 Scottish women do not get a regular smear test, although 75% of cervical cancers are prevented by cervical screenings. Over a quarter of young women are too embarrassed or ashamed to attend a smear test, and over 2/3 don't think it will reduce the risk of cervical cancer. This concerning level of stigma, anxiety and misunderstanding of smear tests steer women away from getting important tests that could ultimately save their lives. It is not a test for cancer, rather it is a test to prevent cancer. There is an overwhelming statistic to prove that early detection can lead to prevention, and we are lucky to have organisations such as Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust that are particularly focused on improving women's understanding of smear results by addressing fears about cancer. Promoting early detection has proven to be successful in combating some cancers. Over the years, Scotland has seen overwhelmingly positive survival rates of bowel cancer due to increased screening and tests. According to the Scottish Public Health Observatory, it is the third most commonly diagnosed cancer amongst men and women. In June 2007, the NH Boards initiated a Scottish bowel screening programme, which invites individuals aged 50 to 74 to participate in screening tests for cancer every 2 years. The tests aim to catch cancer at an early stage and identify precancerous growths. 10 years later, the programme reduced barriers of early diagnosis by simplifying the collection process with the aim to increase participation, effectively increasing the rates of survival to 60% for both sexes. This is a notable survival rate, comes as a result of government intervention and to encourage people to seek out precautionary action. Although we have made great improvements with bowel cancer detection and treatment, there is still more action necessary to improve early diagnosis of cancer. In particular, new approaches are needed to improve the steps to combat lung cancer. Lung cancer happens to be Scotland's biggest single cause of death. The survival rates for lung cancer are strikingly low. Only 9.5% of people diagnosed will survive. And unfortunately, Cancer UK has not seen much improvement in survival over the past 40 years. A major cause of lung cancer has been attributed to smoking. Action on smoking health states that current smokers are 15 times more likely to die from lung cancer than lifelong non-smokers. With smoking being the single biggest cause of cancer, it is also the single biggest avoidable risk factor for it. Scotland has made tremendous progress in tobacco control that has set up a range of measures to shift attitudes towards smoking, smoke-free legislation and continued investment in tobacco control activity included over 15 million a year on smoking cessations services and measures to stop young people from smoking. Since the implementation of these programmes, Scotland's smoke rates have dropped to 18%, and with 2034 tobacco-free initiative, we hope to see the numbers fall below 5%. In light of World Cancer Day, help a loved one quit smoking, or if you smoke, make the decision to quit for good. In my constituency...
No, I'm sorry, you have to conclude. The reason I'm being quite hard on members is the Parliament resumes at 2, so we've not got a lot of time, so please, you have to conclude. I call on Joe Fitzpatrick to close the Government. Minister, please.
Okay, thanks very much, Presiding Officer, and thanks to Monica Lennon for securing this important debate in which we make it clear that cancer remains an absolute priority at the forefront of all of our minds. And like others, it makes me immensely proud to join other colleagues in wearing my Unity band today. And this is the kind of solidarity and unified approach that best represents how we should tackle this disease. Presiding Officer, I will also take this opportunity to commend the fantastic work of all our health service staff helping in this fight and the valuable work of many cancer charities supporting people with cancer in Scotland. I'm going to just take a second to move off script to particularly thank the staff in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, where my dad recently had some fantastic treatment from Mr. Shayanthan Nanthakumaran. Unfortunately, he was very happy to be called Shay for stomach cancer. And stomach cancer is one of a difficult cancer to treat, but I'm absolutely delighted to say that my father, just over Christmas time, got out of hospital and got effectively an all clear and is doing really well without even needing care support now. So a huge thank you to Shai and all the staff in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary for the support that they gave to my dad during what was a difficult time. I think just while I'm talking about Aberdeen, thank Lewis MacDonald for his comments around the Aberdeen Anchor Centre, and of course I hear his request to make sure that when it comes to ministers that is done timeously, and that is absolutely as it should be. I think it's important that we recognise that some 40% of cancers are preventable and that we will continue to take the brave and often world-leading public health actions to help tackle this. Scotland has proudly led the way through initiatives such as the ban on smoking in public places, minimum unit pricing on alcohol, and we're working similarly, brave bill, on the promotion of high-fat, sugar and salt foods. We all know that the ramifications of smoking are the single most significant threat to public health in Scotland. That's why we have a national target, a UK first, for all health boards to achieve quits for the smoking population from the most deprived communities where smoking rates are the highest. And Monica Lennon specifically mentioned wealth inequalities. And Scotland is the only part of the UK that sets targets based on excuse me, the least well-off communities. So through the collective efforts across the country, we've already reduced smoking rates by 7% since 2013, and in 2018 the smoking rate went down to just 19%. But Alison Johnson made some very good points about the fact that there are other factors which particularly target people in the most deprived communities, which we need to make sure that we are putting attention on, as well as smoking. Screening is, of course, also a key weapon in our armoury, and we work hard to maximise the opportunities around this in Scotland. David Torrance talked about cervical cancer, and in recent years we've seen a huge reduction in the amount of cervical pre-cancers, and this is largely thanks to the rollout of the HPV vaccine. Emma Harper talked about the self-testing pilot, and I'm really pleased that Scotland will be rolling this out as a pilot across Scotland later this year. I think it is really important, and I'm hopeful that it will help remove some of the barriers to that potentially life-saving testing. Similarly, thanks to our new UK leading bowel screening test, which Mr Stevenson talked about, we are detecting more bowel cancers than ever before. Of course, it's one thing to stand here and talk about these exciting developments, Presiding Officer, but it's another to ensure they're available to people who need them, and that's why this government, there are 34 different projects have been funded to tackle screening inequality in Scotland and to make sure that everyone has equitable access to these potentially life-saving interventions. Stuart Stevenson also talked about early detection, and we know that the earlier a cancer is diagnosed, the easier it is to treat and even cure. And this is why we launched our £41 million Detect Cancer Early programme. I'm mindful of timing, but I think this is an important point. In Scotland, 25.5% of people were diagnosed at stage 1 in 2017 and 2018, and that's an increase of 9.4% from the baseline years of 2010 and 2011. 743 more people being diagnosed at the earliest stage compared to the baseline, and 1,026 more at the earliest stage 1 and 2 combined. This means more people are being seen and seeing their family and friends survive a cancer diagnosis than ever before. Talking specifically about lung cancer, which, as Monica Lennon said, is one of the most difficult to treat, we're also seeing a 46% increase in the number of stage 1 lung cancer diagnosis compared to the baseline. That equates to around 75 more people being diagnosed at stage 1 each year. And that is, I think, also really important. I'm going to touch on the new overarching DCE social marketing campaign, Survivors, which is currently live. The campaign has been developed in close consultation with the Scottish Cancer Coalition and aims to reduce fears around cancer and empower people to take early action, be it visiting their GP practice or attending screening when invited. Miles Briggs mentioned innovative approaches to treatment, and Scotland is leading the way in radiotherapy. We are the only UK nation to implement a rolling refresh programme that ensures all 5 of our cancer centres are regularly using the most up-to-date linear accelerators, and because of that, all centres are delivering cutting-edge modern radiotherapy. Alison Johnson rightly talked about workforce, and in the midst of all the Brexit uncertainty, our health workforce continues to deliver with care and commitment for Scotland's patients. NHS Scotland staffing figures are at record high levels, having grown over the past 7 consecutive years. And I've got a whole load of stats about how we're making a difference in terms of recruiting in areas particularly around radiologists, but I want to skip on and move to talking about World Cancer Day itself, and of course the theme of unity, and the prime example of this is in our £18 million partnership with Macmillan Cancer Support. Partnership's the first of its kind in the UK and will ensure that every cancer patient in Scotland has access to a key support worker who can provide emotional, financial and practical support. Obviously, there's been a lot of work done, and we have to continue those efforts. The Cabinet Secretary will shortly be announcing an update on our cancer strategy that will set out a range of new actions to help drive that continuing improvement. And I can assure Claire Adamson that action around less survivable cancers will be key to that update, and I hope colleagues from across the Chamber will welcome and support these new actions when they are taken. Just in conclusion, Presiding Officer, to thank colleagues from across the Chamber for coming together, and again to thank Cancer Research UK, Marie Curie and other charities, and all of our fantastic staff of the NHS who work tirelessly to look after us when we most need it. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much. That concludes the debate. Now suspend this meeting until 2 o'clock.